Welcome everyone to today's session. Today we're going to be looking at pain-free grading plans by using SITEOPS. So a little bit of what we're going to talk about today before we jump right in. We're going to talk about some of the issues in grading, especially in that conceptual phase of a project. And as we all know, that's where a project is going to succeed or fail, is a lot of times inside that conceptual phase. We've got to start the project off right. And a lot of times there are grading that is need to be performed on the project. And sometimes we don't do grading at all. Sometimes we do, but again, rarely in the conceptual phase. We get into the detail we need to, especially with budgeting and looking for alternatives. We're going to cover that in this session. For the ones who haven't seen SITEOPS before, I'm going to quickly go into conceptual workflow and where does the grading and where does grading tools that SITEOPS have built, where does it fit inside of the conceptual workflow? So as for every typical project, we got to have a location. SITEOPS can help you use just a simple address, whether you have DGN files, DWG files, other data such as context capture. You can bring this in, create a project from it, have your site acquisition data ready to go as a model, and then be able to start creating site plans. SITEOPS is going to help you create those quick site plans. And then when you get a site plan created, we want to quickly look at grading and grading alternatives as to how best to look at this, and then throw a quick little stormwater design on it just to make sure that we can grade or drain it the way we want to. And of course, we want to look for the most cost-effective design. That's what SITEOPS is here for. Not to necessarily come up with the best design, to come up with the best grading plan, the best cost-effective. For example, balancing a site for grading, cut and fill, may not be the cheapest way to build the site. Based on import and export cost or retaining wall cost, things like that, it may be better to have walls, may be better to import, may be better to export. We'll walk through some scenarios today on, again, how does SITEOPS think and how can we control those grading models to look at those alternatives. And ultimately, we're looking at options. We want to give the stakeholders their ability to put comments to a project and give it a yes or a no. And if we're lucky to get a yes, we go forward. Most likely, we usually get no's, or we need to tweak the model a little bit, and we go back and we go through revisions all the way back to the site plan, but we need to go back through grading, stormwater, budgeting to look at, did the revision we make sense for the client. So what we're going to look at in this session is mainly grading. Now, conceptual grading has a number of issues that we have to face inside the industry. Number one is time versus cost. Creating grading plans, as we know, you're on here because most likely in watching this session, you do grading plans. And we know grading plans are time consuming, and there's not a lot we can do to speed this up until now. We're going to show you in SITEOPS how at least conceptually we can speed up looking at the concepts of grading. So cost becomes a big factor in the conceptual phase because, again, we have very little payment that we're being given for doing conceptual, or we may not be doing any at all. It may be a design build, or it's just part of what we do with our service to help land a project. We do some conceptual upfront design, so we typically wouldn't do grading. For example, because of how long it takes to grade a subdivision, a residential single-family subdivision, it can take weeks to months depending on the size of the project. We can't do that in the conceptual phase. So cost becomes a big issue. So does time, again, because time means money inside the business. So we got to start weighing the time versus cost. The other one is assumptions. And this is a big one in conceptual grading because we're trying to do everything really fast. We're trying to get to the answer so that we can meet our budgets, make our boss happy, make the client happy, make the stakeholders happy. We take assumptions. And a lot of times, the assumption is not the right thing. We find out how to revise the design to overcome those assumptions as we go through the 2 or 3 week, 4 week, a month-long design process. We clean up those situations, going through iterations manually to solve the problem. And I'm going to show you a great example of how assumptions can get not just the designer, but the client in trouble as well. And another one is the level of detail. Again, when I've only got a week or 2 weeks to do something, and it normally takes a month to 2 months, we're missing a lot of detail. And that detail typically has items that cost money in construction. And that's what, again, we're going to look at. How can SITEOPS help control that? And again, the biggest thing usually is killing us is deliverable time frame. The client gives us a location. They don't want the results in a month. A lot of them want it within an hour if we could give it to them. A little unrealistic, even with SITEOPS. But that's the kind of things that the client are wanting. They're wanting quick results because in their world, they have performance. They have financials. No matter what the project is. I don't care if it's a hospital, school, wastewater treatment plant, manufacturing, residential, commercial. They all have to go into some form of a pro forma and then justify, is the project worth doing? So the quicker we can get them the information, the better. And that's the whole game of doing conceptual design, is getting the design that everybody approves, getting quick answers, and deciding whether or not to go forward. And hopefully, if we've done our job correctly and they're happy, we go forward with the design. So I'm going to show you an example of where, again, assumptions can hurt. This is a project many years ago. It's about 10 years ago now. I went to work as director of engineering for a national developer. My very first day, they told me I get to meet the owner of the development company and some executives from Lowe's Home Improvement. I was like, wow, this is cool. First day. And you're going to see the image there on the screen. This is from the Google Earth as it sits today. Back then, all I had was a 2D black and white line drawing that showed the layout of this project. And they said, you need to address some issues with the owner and the representatives from Lowe's Home Improvement when they get here. So I turned to the next sheet of the drawing, and I saw something that was a little disturbing. From an engineering side, we typically don't like building 50, 60 foot high gable walls and also poured in place concrete walls. They are very, very expensive. But here was the problem. This project was conceived and designed in 2D. It wasn't until later on that they actually put this into 3D, in other words, graded the project, to realize they had an issue. And the bigger part of the issue was the developer in the very beginning stage, when they were looking at everything in 2D, was told there was going to be a wall, a little wall. The reality was it's a big wall, and they missed budget by well over $600,000 on just the wall piece alone, not counting all the extra dirt movement. So I had to go in and I said, all right, let's see if Lowe's can help us come out of this problem. Can we lower the building? Can we do some alternative things? Well, because of visibility from the highway and from the other main road, this was a corner at an intersection, Lowe's was not going to have that. They'd already signed contracts, and that was the deliverable. So in this case, this developer lost $600,000. Needless to say, I won't say what engineering company that was. We never used them again because those are the kind of things that should have been picked up in the very beginning. But I did understand myself, just like everybody else, when you're trying to get something in a couple days, there's going to be some detail that's missed. So we're going to jump in. We're going to start using SITEOPS. Now I'm going to start showing you some things that you can do within SITEOPS, such as how do we control grading? How can we set our defaults to also control it? How can we use grading constraints to make it do what I want? And how can it just generally grade from a concept? So let's just jump out, and I'm going to go straight into SITEOPS. SITEOPS is, for the ones who haven't seen it, it is a web-based type software. A little on your computer, a little on the web. I'm just going to log in. Now, I'm not going to go into a lot of the picks and clicks on how to do a layout, how to do some of the other components you might see me do inside of this project. This is more geared around grading. Toward the end, I'll show you where you can go and see some YouTube videos on the Bentley site analysis website, and we'll be able to you can then go in and clearly see how I created parking lots or roadways or sidewalks, and how I went and did some visualization, things like that. Again, we have a lot of things we can bring in. We're going to let the project load up. The subject property I'm going to show you for today is out at Penn State University. There's the Coliseum, the stadium, the baseball field, and we're going to look at, maybe we're going to do some housing, public housing, who knows what. We're going to put something over in this little piece of property. So I'm going to go over here to the side, and I'm going to turn off this layer, and we're going to concentrate on this piece of property. And if we look at the existing grade, we're going to see that we have some fairly significant grade across this project. So let's go in and start addressing how we're going to grade. Let's do something simple. Let's just come in, again, something that would take us a lot of time, but we're going to do it very simple here. We're going to come in, we're going to go to the top where my layout tool is, and we're going to draw a simple parking lot. Let's just draw a parking lot right through the middle. Again, now drawing the parking lot, this would be nothing complicated, right? I just want to draw a parking lot, hit my layout solver in the upper top. Let's open it up to make it look a little better. And we'll open it to the upper side. There we go. We'll just throw a parking lot. And let's come in and add just 2 driveways. Well, actually, let's add one first. Let's just add one single drive. I'm going to come out from the main road, and we're going to tie right in to that roadway. Again, very simple. Okay. Now, SITEOPS, let's just say at this point, this is all we needed. This is all the client's looking for. We want to grade this. But before we can grade this, we've got to start thinking a little bit about what are the requirements that the client's looking for. And this is the first component that you'll start looking at inside of SITEOPS. What are my defaults and what are my constraints? Now, defaults are things that can be set across a project, across an organization. And these are generic type of things if we look for grading, such as what are my slope away on my buildings? What is my parking lot min and maximum slope? So if I create a new parking lot, it's going to be automatically defaulted 1 to 4. Now I'm going to show you in just a second how I deviate from that. So if I had multiple parking lots, I could have all kind of different multiple min and maxes. How are we going to deal with roadways? How are we going to come in and deal with, which we'll play with in just a few moments, a wall? What's the min and max wall height? Maybe I'm going to set it at 6 so we don't go above structural height. Again, you can start controlling these, and you can save them as templates. So you can have them based on client requests, zoning, again, all kind of different situations. If I go in and pick on the parking lot, you can see at the very sort of upper middle, there's a thing called parking layout. Now again, this is all about layout. This is parking space size, drive requirements, islands. But right below that, you see parking grading. Most features inside of SITEOPS is going to have a layout and a grading section. Again, today we're going to focus in on the grading. And you can look at things like a lot of sub areas inside of a bigger area, such as islands inside of a parking lot. I can come in and do a different material, but I can also come in and change the parking lot slopes 1 to 4%. What material is this? Because that's very important, because it also does budget takeoffs. We'll look at a budget in just a little bit. So we want to make sure we take off for the material. But I also, for example, have where my light pavement in my system is defaulted to the 8-inch section. So it's a 5, 2, and 1. For somewhere else, you may have a different section based on the requirements for your region. And then we can do other areas as well. Let's go look at a roadway real quick. And we're going to, again, a lot of the same thing. We'll have layout. We're going to have how do we deal with some driveway settings, such as do we have striping and what's the width, and do we have on-street parking? Do we not? If I pull up the layout, you can see a little on-street parking on that side. Just wanted to show that real quick. But down at the bottom, again, just like the parking lot, we have a grading section. Now the difference is it knows that it's a road and it's not a parking lot. It's not asking for a min-max parking lot slope. It's asking for a min-max driveway slope. And then how is my cross section? Do I want to flex to basically try to match into the existing topography a little better, or do I want it crowned? We're going to play with roads also again in just a second, just a few months when we go into a residential project. For now, let's look at this concept. We're sitting here going, great, it's a parking lot, it's got exactly what I want, and I want to grade this. So let's hit the grading button. What's going to happen is SITEOPS going to start looking at all the different bits and pieces of that project. And what I really want you to look at first, we've got a nice little picture on the screen, but look in the lower right-hand corner, you're going to see the numbers are moving because we're looking at what is the optimum cut and fill for this project. And then it's doing quantities takeoff for curb and gutter and asphalt. And then I can come in and look at the grading for my project. Red is cut, blue is fill, yellow is little to no elevation change. And I'm going to address in a minute just what you see up in the upper top. Why is it cutting in some areas near the top of the project? I'm going to show you that in just a second. Come on, and I can start looking at what is it thinking about from a grading standpoint. So that's 1 to 4%. What if I came in and said, oh, great, let's come in and change this to 2%. Pick on my parking lot area, 2%, do layout, and grade. Now if I come in and look at my colors, you're going to see they're drastically different. And it's looking at how can it pull dirt off the site in the most effective way to fill up the project. And we're going to see now it's a lot less contour lines because we're doing a lot flatter slope. But I can make that decision by quickly just coming in and changing something. Let's change this back to 4. I just want to show you real quick that you can change things and quickly see what's the ramifications. So if the client says, hey, I need this at 2% for somebody I'm selling the building to, then there's going to be an additional cost for building to that flatness. I can be able to come in and tell them, oh, there's an additional $100,000 cost, so you need to ask for more money. Now, one thing I will go and show real quick, in that upper area, we saw some grading happening. Now, what it's doing is my slopes up here are exceeding what I've told for the property. Overall property, I've told I want no slopes steeper than 2 to 1. Now, there are little tools such as SITEOPS that we can come in and call a layout area. I'm going to go through a few of these in just a second, but we're going to go through and we'll just quickly add one in. And I can just say, all right, in this area along the top, this is existing. Go to the sides and tell it we do not have curb and gutter along the side, and let's grade it. So I can come in and start using to help control my grade. And now you can see at the top we have none of them up on that upper edge. And you can see where I still have a few down, but just wanted to keep a difference. To help control grading, we even give you tools like layout. This is an optional little tool, other area that will come in and allow you to do whatever you need to do. Make it existing and go forward and make it, again, customize it to the point you need. Because we know we can't make a software that automatically knows everything you need. Again, that's what we're going to let the user have. So I can come in, and you see at the top here, we have grading is not feasible. This is something that SITEOPS can help you look at. We're going to go in and see what is the problem. Most likely, and that's exactly what I figured, it's right out here at the main intersection. So here's my problem. If I look at existing contours, I got some cross slope. It's falling down pretty good. If I go back to my actual roadway, I'm going to go right to that front little piece, not the whole section. Let's go right there. And if I go to properties, and I go, remember we had a cross section of 1%. So the property around it is definitely falling steeper than 1%. So how can 1% tie into 4 or 5%? I have to be able to let it flex. So I'm going to go in and say remove and make it the crowning flexible. So you can start playing again with even how does roadways tie in and start looking at how do we solve different issues.
Hey,
so let's go. Yes.
Got a quick question for you here before we move on. Is the existing ground surface and the example from Google Earth was one of the questions from
it is not from Google Earth. This is actually from something called context capture. But it also, you have the ability to bring things in, so I can bring in my own DWG files, a point file, a DGN file, however you have it. A lot of our users really like to use this thing called geolocate, which allows me to go in, and you can see right here it even already knows exactly where I'm located. So if I wanted to come in and grab and locate this site, I could just put it in my view, say grab, and then from that point I can grab the USGS topography or the SRTM, and it creates a model and a surface for me automatically. Great question. So let's do something. We're going to open this project up just a little bit further down the road. We're going to go in and say we worked on this project for 30 or 40 minutes, and again, we're making some student housing, parking lots, and everything else that we want to look at. So I've come in, we got some buildings, we got some roadway with parking on it, we got some parking lot itself, we got a pool area. Now here's something neat. I want to talk about something real quick. There's a thing inside SITEOPS to help control grading for a great idea of a link height example is a dock, a pool. I want a vertically straight down wall. So a link height is something that you can come in. If you look over on the right hand side, if you know exactly what that number should be, it's 5 feet down. And maybe in this case, I'm going to say, you know what, because that's a pool, don't even use that wall in the construction cost. I need a wall. We need a vertical wall there. We got to get rid of the dirt. I got to take care of it in my project. But let's say I'm over here by that steeper hill, and I've got a sidewalk going up for the bicyclist. I can also come in, and what you can see right here is, notice how I have this set linked to 0, and I'm going to show you what happens. Again, I'm telling it no wall. 0 means I want you to tie in exactly as you're supposed to. And it's almost like don't even think about it. And you're going to see it, I've told it right up along that area, do not have a wall. And over here on the right, just so you can see the difference, I left a wall. You can see down at the pool, we have a wall. Now the building may be bouncing in your screen a little bit. That's an indicator that I have a grading problem. And the reality is, there's no way I can come across that site that flat without needing some walls. Because remember, this is a fairly severe topo coming down from this upper edge. So the question becomes, how do we solve this? Okay, well, one thing we can start doing is, how do we set walls? So I'm going to do a chain side tool. And all I did was draw on other areas similar to the one you saw me draw just a little bit ago to stop the grading. And I'm going to say select chain, go to the side, and I'm going to say, you know what? You can have a wall. And I'm going to come along this back edge and do the same thing. Let's do select chain. And I'm just going to come across this side over to here. Again, I just pre-drew some areas just to save us a little bit of time. And we're going to do one more. I'm going to go ahead and tell you that we need one. Again, if you would sit here and work with the project long enough, you'd see that all of a sudden we now need one on this lower back edge. And we're going to come through, select chain. Now here's the thing. When SITEOPS starts to grade in just a second, it's not going to put up a wall just to put up a wall. It puts up a wall for one of two reasons. First, it's cheaper option. So if I got $25 a square foot stack split face wall blocks I could buy like at Home Lowe's Depot Home Improvement, you might see some walls. If I got a really nice slate stacked wall that's 150 or a precast wall that's 250 a square foot, it's only going to put a wall if it needs it. Now, and that's the other thing. The second way you're going to have a wall inside of it is because that's the only physical way it can build the project. So if I come in now and hit grade, we're going to let SITEOPS grade, and now you can see walls. Now all of a sudden that little wall became bigger. That one along the sidewalk is bigger. Now again, we're going to put rails up there. It becomes a bigger issue. But we got to make the site work, or who cares where the sidewalk is, right? We got to beat the fundamentals. The same around that lower arch parking lot. We've got to be able to solve that problem. And you notice the grading issue goes away. But let's say they come back and go, great, but that one wall was really tall. We don't want, for legal reasons, we don't want a 10, 12-foot high wall. Even if we still have to have a 6-foot wall with a rail, it's a little bit better. So again, this is where you go back and you play with defaults. I can go back and just type in wall. And instead of I got a 50-foot set as my max, which we probably don't want to build 50-foot walls unless you have to. I just hit apply. Now let's do a layout and grade it again. And see if I can still achieve this design. And if we look, you're going to see a much smaller wall here, but a little bit bigger one on the lower. Because what we've done is we've now divided it out. We've actually, in this case, are going to raise the buildings up a little bit because by the time I work my grades across, but I do have enough room to still slope everything in. So there's a cost to making that decision. And you can set with the client and say, all right, now we're going to have to do it. And here's another place where there's an additional cost. There was previously no wall on this lower parking lot. Now we have one. But again, what SITEOPS is doing is taking the experience we know of what's right and wrong, what's good and bad, and allowing us to be able to change things quickly. Think out of that box. What if I put 2 walls or 3 walls? What if I went in and put another area and stacked another wall? You can do that by just merely adding pieces to the actual project itself. So again, yes, Gerald.
Hey, we got a little bit more of an advanced question here. It's on the building slopeway setting. One of our attendees is asking how to set the building slopeway on adjacent areas to buildings. Specifically, probably on grassed areas.
Oh, you want to grade it like toward a building? I'm looking at the question.
Away from a building. So if the grade is falling towards the building, how do you get it to slope away from the building?
Yeah, there is a slope away feature on the building itself. So if you come in and actually tell the building, now here's the difference. I'm gonna show you what the. So if I pick a building side of the building, you're going to see over on the side of slope away. I have mine defaulted to 0 because I'm controlling it by the sidewalk that's out there. So that's one way I could tell. Now here's the only difference. If there is a grassed area between the building and the sidewalk, SITEOPS will not grade the grassed area as a slope away. To achieve that, we would go in and use a thing, and I'm going to show it up here just in the top, just to give you an idea of what it works. There's a thing in here called a grading constraint area. So I can go in and drop a grading constraint area, and this can be any size. It can be big, it can be small, it can be any direction, it can be anything we want. And it can sit over the top of an area. It can sit over the top of a parking lot, off to the side of a building where it covers the building and the sidewalk. Again, lets me start grading and controlling things a certain way. So let's say I just want to say, all I want is anywhere in that area to grade at 10%. So I can do this. We can come in really quick, go out, and we'll go up to this upper area. We'll turn on the contours. We can now see my area right there as I'm grading at 10%. You see it's actually making a little hill. But what if I wanted to grade it a certain way? This is some of that control. We can actually set a grading direction. I want it to grade from southwest to northeast, and I want it to grade at 5%. Don't want it to think, don't want it to do. Sort of like an athletic field, we have to grade them a certain way. We can't make a pitcher's mound in a hole. It has to be up. So we can come in and use these areas to tell the system, we want you to grade exactly in a certain distance, in a certain direction, at a certain slope. So you have that control to go in and start modifying the site exactly the way you want it to, so you can achieve the design the client's looking for. So let's jump into a different style. I know we don't have a lot of time on one of these, and I want to make sure I get into one or two other quick things. So let's jump into residential. Again, residential, we can have grading constraints there that are completely different than if I'm doing your traditional sites, such as the building we had here, or wastewater treatment plants, or manufacturing facilities, or warehousing. So SITEOPS can handle a lot of different styles of grading. Again, a lot of the grading tools are generic. They're the way you use them is what sets them apart from the other tools that are out there, because you're able to apply your experience to the system. So this is a simple little subdivision. Again, when I show you the link of the YouTube, you can actually go and find out how I created this subdivision, little mixed use, little single family. So a couple of things I want to show in here. Another way we can control grading is through roadways. Now, when I showed the roadway earlier, I went in and showed just a little piece because it was more of a driveway. I can go in and go to a cross section, and I can actually tell it, we do not want walls on our roadway. I want it to look like this. Do I have medians? Do I not? If we don't have curb and gutter, how is my ditch going to look? I can start defining what's going to happen to that. There's also another thing we can do to control grading. If I go under view, let's just stop the layout solver for a second. There we go. And I can do show profile. This is one a lot of our users have really started to like. So let's just say I don't like the way SITEOPS came up with the design. I want it a little better. I want it a little cleaner. I want something a little different. So when I look at it in profile, red is existing, white is top of grade, subgrade is green. We have a little thing up here called best fit. And what I'm going to tell SITEOPS is, come in and start by giving me a best fit section. I have a K value of 20, and I can just say okay, and SITEOPS is now going to take that and start looking for what is the best way to design that roadway to make it more exact, more clean, no little ridges in it. And it's going to run for just a few seconds. It's going to say, all right, here's the best way we think you should grade the site. But the beauty of it is once I get this done, I can start modifying the design. Let's just say in the middle, I've decided I want to raise this roadway. And if you raise the roadway, you'll actually see if I go into a negative, just like inside the software, the road will go to red wherever we're not meeting tangents, wherever we're having issues. I can start designing, or I may just say, you know what, let's just get rid of that one altogether. Or let's add a new one. Let's come over to this 1K value, and maybe on the side I need to just pick on this, go to properties, and I want to change the K value to, I don't know, 500. Now you can see it opened the length of the curve up, but it caused issues. So again, I can start coming in and modifying, tweaking, changing this design just as I want. And then when I'm done, we will stop and it will apply itself to that roadway. And then it actually will start affecting the other roadways that tie to it. So I can then start cascading this issue down through the project. So when we grade, we're actually going to look at grading those areas exactly as we showed. And if you see the little blue right over in that area, that's where we raise the roadway up to have a fill scenario. Now the other thing we can do is how do we grade the lots? So again, inside of SITEOPS, there is, again, a lot of different ways of looking at how to draw and grade things. In this case, we're going to come up with something about lots. And you can save these as templates so you can use them over and over again. On the left, this is your layout. Do we have a parcel at all? Do we not along that section of roadway? Do we have buildings? Do we not? But if we do have buildings, over on the right-hand side, your slopes. Typical things if you're doing residential, the developer will want. How, plus and minus above the back of curb. How is it looking at for your street frontage, your side yards, your rear? And once you go past the rear yard and you want to transition straight up, more of a tie-in to a steeper backyard around the setback area. Do we have walls? Do we not? Or if we do, are they on the property line? Or are they along the building? Again, how are we going to design all this you can see? Very simple to use, but allows me to have the flexibility to grade the way I want. You can even put in things such as rock and geotech, and suitable soil. So a lot of things we don't get time to go into in this session, but you can get into some very detailed grading in that conceptual phase. Again, it's not going to be detailed to the point of saying that's a construction document. By no means. This doesn't replace anything you have today. This is a new tool in your toolkit, and that's what it's here for. How can I come in and start looking at alternatives? Again, not in like super fine detail. You notice I didn't show like how to do a ditch between every house, because the ditch, again, which does affect grading, is something we can deal with later on. The main thing the client wants to know is, can I get my lot yield, and what's the basic idea of grading? Can we even make this a feasible project? So one other quick thing I want to show you, the little project we were working on over at Penn State, the one thing that's really become popular with a lot of people now, I just was actually last week at the ACEC spring or fall conference in Colorado Springs, and everything is about visualization. Clients want to see their project, and they don't want to see them this way. They don't want to see them blacklined, and they're getting tired of seeing them as a flat piece of paper with coloring on it. They're wanting to see models. They're wanting to see interactive, because their job is to take what we deliver them and use that to sell the project to somebody else, either the city, the municipality, stakeholders, their clients. Somebody else has got to decide we're going to do this project so they can go forward with creating it. So for the last while, we've been able to do exporting to LumenRT. And I want to show this again because this is another part of grading I think that gets left out a lot, is how can I show all the grading we did. So in that Penn State project where we had those multiple steps of walls, I can now go in just by exporting straight out to there. We can create something that looks like this. I got the buildings from ABD, which is AEcoSim, a BIM software that Bentley has. It could be a Revit model, it could be SketchUp. You see I got the bus line moving. I got people around the pool. But look at the walls. They're there. I can actually show the wall in relation to the project for the client to see. And then we can turn on this into a more nice little 3D view. We're going to have the clouds moving. You can see Nittany Lions Stadium up above. Again, all these little bits and pieces that the client can now use my project, my conceptual design, to do more than just an evaluation. They can use it to win projects and clients and information that they can use to make a better decision. And you can do it, again, if once you have seen LumenRT, if you have it, you can do a lot of things like change seasons of the year and time and add people walking and running. Again, a lot of different things you can do with the project to make sure that the clients understand your intent of the design.
All right, David.
So,
we got
yes. Go ahead, Joe.
Got a couple questions on SITEOPS. One of the questions here is about how the calculations are done. So if you want to go through the optimization process and maybe a little bit of the budget.
Yeah, so basically what's done in SITEOPS, there's two levels of where calculations are done. Now again, the calculations are all done for you automatically. Again, it understands everything we're looking at, in essence, every little piece. So if I look at a 10, for example, this is nothing really different than we look at in any software. We're working with a surface. And what we're doing is automating how the surface works. So it's going to move all the bits and pieces of this surface, all these little triangles, to come up with different iterations. It's using the unit cost that I have underneath the default property area. We have a whole section of unit cost, again, that you can quickly fill in and save. And then what ultimately you want to get is you want to get something that is a budget. Again, this is not just a simple budget. This is a budget that can be used, again, by the client to understand what's being done on the project. So here's an example. On-site prep. Think about it. I don't know about y'all. When I had a company, I never did topsoil, dealing with topsoil in the first couple hours of a project. It was something we dealt with down the road in detail, most definitely. But depending on the type of project, topsoil can become a huge issue and a huge cost. For example, we're not going to export this topsoil. We're going to figure out something else to do with it. We can look at cut and fill and rock. And how does rock affect my stormwater piping as we go into dealing with stormwater? Do we have export, retaining walls, fine grading, seeding, erosion control, your asphalt? And you can see the unit cost, the quantity, the subtotal for each category, and then the total for the whole part. For example, on-site improvements is 1.6 million. Then we can come in and stormwater. It's going to do a rational method. It's going to stay very conservative. Its main thing is, can we get down to the stormwater down to some point where we can discharge? And we are working for the ones. I do see a number of people who are users. Just letting y'all know, we got a little something coming up later this year for y'all. We're going to be able, similar to the way I did the roadway, control the grading a lot more. You're going to be able to control areas like parking lots and sidewalks and building pads and all that kind of stuff. It's really cool. So just a little quick shot for you that as you go into SITEOPS, it's not just about controlling the roadway or controlling those grading constraint areas. You will be able to control the whole model before you know it. And then there's also a thing called miscellaneous cost. This is the thing SITEOPS doesn't bring in. For example, if I brought in trees like we saw in that 3D model, I could have told it everywhere I put one of those trees, that's $350. I can draw lines and draw basically offset the center line to the back of the curb and say, all right, that's water main, and it's, what do we put it at? $150 a foot for a 12-inch water main. And if I change the roadway because I've associated line, or I just change the line itself, it automatically will update the cost. So I can come in and add some customization to that cost based on what I need to add to the project. So again, it just doesn't give you the quick budget that you saw in the viewer. It actually gives you a very detailed budget that you can use later on to help the client, again, understand in more detail what's happening on their project.
All right, David, got another question for you here. Does the SITEOPS have the ability to have separate K values for crest and sag curves?
Well, what you would do for different K values for crest and sag, there's two different areas you're going to deal with this. In the very beginning, there's a K value right here, and you're going to see a summit and a sag, and you see I just sort of threw some crazy numbers in there just testing around. So here you can set a crest and a sag. And then what you would do is inside the viewer, let's go back out, and there we go. Inside the profiler, this becomes more of a manual process here. So if I want a different K value on my crest, my sag versus my crest, then I would manually change that. What this is basically when you go into the profiler, you're leaving the automation and you're going into manually overriding the system, which is great. You need to do that, but that's the way you're going to start controlling the model into more detail.
All right. Back to your model that you created, your Luminar T model here. Somebody's asking about, is that Google Earth terrain and imagery brought in the SITEOPS?
Not necessarily. You can get something similar if you want Google Earth terrain and imagery, something similar to that. If you're a SketchUp user, we do give you the ability to click into SketchUp, and they have a thing called Add Location, and they have that kind of tool inside of SketchUp that once you identify an area in SketchUp, you can have it exported to SITEOPS and use it similarly to the way we do with the USGS and the aerial Esri imagery. We can come in and quickly grab Esri information as well.
All right, we have another question here asking about does SITEOPS have railroad functionality?
Okay, this is the way we've been asked this a lot. At least from Conceptual, the way we've had people that have done railroads, especially spur lines and some other things like that, the way they look at it is the roadway is just basically the same thing as a rail spur line. So if I pick on it and we go to all sides and I go to my cross section, I can set the cross section to be something that's more similar to a rail, because maybe it's more like it's 8 feet wide. Maybe I want no curb and gutter for sure. I'm going to come in and let's make this, I don't know, maybe 1% slope. I'm not a railroad person, so hopefully nobody on here is going to kill me. We definitely don't have any sidewalk on it. My offset is probably going to be more like, I don't know, we'll say 6 feet on each side. Oh, that's my slope, sorry. I want more like a 50% slope. 50%, and my ditch offset is, that's fine, that's good. Let's go at a shoulder width of 5 and 5, and maybe here it's 10% slope, a little steeper than on the main pad. So at that point, however I define that cross section, that would be the point where we can do that. And that would, again, what happens on the top of that roadway or that pad can be it can be a road, it can be a rail, and then what a lot of people will do is on the rail, they'll come back in because it's mainly gravel, and instead of asphalt, they use gravel. And they set their gravel base for that, so it gives a cost. And then at that point, to really come in and start working out your linear part of it, the profile, then you would come in and start tweaking it to match your constraints there. So hopefully that answers the question. So again, we don't have what we call a roadway tool. That's one thing about SITEOPS. We try to keep it open enough that you can be creative and take something out of the box. Roadway becomes a railroad, for example.
All right, got another question here. Somebody's asking, can we export the data to something like Civil 3D or to roads?
Most definitely. One thing SITEOPS has always been, and as far as we know will always be, is CAD agnostic. When you go to export, you can directly, like if I want to save a DWG file to use in Civil 3D or DGN for any of the Bentley products, you know, different. You can see different files. Or if I want to simply say I want to go and put this into a Bentley software, I just pick Bentley software and it shows me what I got. If I want to go into Autodesk software, you can see I got Autodesk. 2016 was actually my Civil 3D 2016. You know, I got SketchUp. I got my Luminar T versions. So you can come in, send this out. And we even have a SITEOPS Doc Center, which is similar to a MicroStation version that you can use there. And I can even take this straight out to Google Earth, that I could then save my KMZ file and send that to a client and say, hey, open this inside of Google Earth, and here's what your project looks like.
All right, got a question here. Somebody's asking, how does SITEOPS connect with the designs in OpenRoads Concept Station? Can a design from Concept Station be loaded into SITEOPS and the grading refine, then loaded back into Concept or Designer?
Okay, perfect. All right, for the ones who don't know what OpenRoads Concept Station is, this is a tool similar to this one. It's more roadway oriented. Again, it's more for highway and interstate at this point, bridging, things like that. We're in the process of working a relationship between SITEOPS and OpenRoads. At the current OpenRoads Concept Station, at the current point, it doesn't have any working points between the two. But do definitely keep a watch on that. That is something we are in the works on. So before you know it, the two tools will be working together most definitely.
All right, got a question here. Somebody wanted a little bit of a talk about what the SITEOPS Doc Center is.
Okay. The SITEOPS Doc Center, just to save time, we'll see if we can get it to open up. If we can get it in, if not, I'll basically just describe it. The easiest way to think about this is if you're a MicroStation user, it's a MicroStation tool. It's the it's basically the Connect version, so it's a more ribbon-based version. So if you're, for example, I'll be honest, I am a Power Civil 3D user. When I first saw this tool, I loved it because that reminds me very similar to the same way I do workflow inside of Civil 3D and inside of MicroStation. So it's very easy for me to pick up. So if I don't necessarily need Civil 3D because maybe I'm more the preliminary person and I just want to go out and create a quick little, you know, little one-sheeter, again, black and white, we still got to submit those, right? And I want to add some notes and some dimensions in my border and things like that. That comes along with SITEOPS, and you can quickly go from basically our design out to something that you could create a presentation with to print and deliver to, example, municipality for preliminary plan approval. Let me grab it real quick. It opened up on my other screen. We'll just drag it across. So this is SITEOPS Doc Center. So you can see, for example, there's all my line work, everything we need to see, my building pads, my back edge face of curb, my subgrade contours, my finished grade contours existing. Again, all that information I had on that project is right here, and I can even now come into my little data center and see how much impervious surface we have, or all kind of little bits of information that we need to go forward, again, with putting borders and different scenarios on this project.
Perfect. All right, got another question here for you, David. The participant's asking whether you can also do this in metric.
Oh, most definitely. Yes, SITEOPS is used all over the world, so it doesn't matter whether it's imperial or metric. And the way you would change that is under administrator. So if I came in and said, let's just go to this project, I want to go to edit, and I want to change this to metric, and do save, and then I can just do close. So if let's go back and we'll just reopen this project real quick. We'll let it open. When I open this project, everything will go from imperial to metric, just by basically changing over the units. So if you now look in the lower left-hand corner, for example, my areas are in square meters and hectares. If I come over to the right-hand side and let's just pick on something, you can, let's pick on something that actually has As we can see in the parcel area now, things are in meters. So again, you can quickly go back and forth between units of measure if you need to. So if you wanted a budget that was, instead of being an imperial, you want it metric, just change it, save it, create a budget, and then go back to imperial if you want. So again, you can quickly go back and forth.
All right, perfect. Hey, got another question here. Somebody's asking about importing a SketchUp block into setups and then using it on the parcels. I don't know if you have one available to you.
I don't in this account, but I'll just give you an idea. This project I opened up, the idea of bringing in a SketchUp block is something as simple as coming in. Let's just try. I don't know how long this house will take to come in. We'll give it a little shot. Let's say I wanted to bring in a house. There's a house. This is from SketchUp. Again, it don't necessarily have to be from SketchUp. It can be from other items. And what I've brought in is, for once you want to know more for the 3D side, I can come in. We'll roll this around to our viewer. Now again, this is a SITEOPS viewer. This is not Lumen RT or anything like that. I can actually come in. Oh, there we go. And there's the house. If I just zoom in, you can see there's the house model that will go out to SketchUp. There's then in this case, I had multifamily townhomes. We can come in, and actually in SITEOPS, you can tell it to assign the house. Now, one just disclaimer, if I bring in this house, it will be the same house on every lot. So some people do and some people don't like that, because it depends on how fast you need to put something out. If I got a client that wants something within the same day, he's probably going to get the exact same house on every lot, because at least it puts a house out there. And then what I do is I'll set the center line over and tell that new line that I want a tree every 100 feet and assign a tree to it. Quickly create a model. If I want the houses to be random, then I'm probably going to have to sit here and more place that items. But the beauty is, as long as I'm changing the grading, then it will modify and change as we go forward with it as well. So those buildings move with any grading changes that we add to the project.
All right, David, looks like we're all done with the questions. I'm going